Captain Zethkar stood on the bridge of his warship, the bone render watching another world burn beneath him. The orange flame spread across the planet's surface like a disease, consuming everything the weak species below had built over thousands of years. He felt nothing but satisfaction. The Korthak had ruled the galaxy for 300 years, and Zethkar knew why. He looked at his reflection in the metal wall and saw perfection. 8 feet of pure killing machine stared back at him. His black shell could stop bullets. His claws could tear through steel like paper. His 3 hearts pumped acid green blood that could survive in space for hours. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Commander Drac approached, his heavy footsteps making the metal floor ring. "The Altarian cities have fallen. Their leaders want to surrender." Zethkar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Of course they do. Soft creatures always break when faced with real strength." He turned away from the burning world below. The Altarians had been weak, like all the other species the Korthak had conquered. They lived on gentle worlds with mild weather and reasonable gravity. They had never learned to fight for survival like the Korthak had. Korth Prime, the Korthak homeworld, was a place that killed the weak. The gravity was 3 times stronger than most worlds. Acid storms raged for months at a time. The temperature could freeze metal or melt stone, sometimes in the same day. Creatures with teeth like swords hunted in packs, and the very air carried poison. Only the strongest Korthak survived childhood on such a world. Those who lived became perfect warriors. They could breathe poison, survive in space, and kill with their bare hands. Every other species in the galaxy seemed like children playing at war. "Send word to the fleet," Zethkar ordered. "Tell them to prepare for the next target. The merchants of Velen Prime should provide good sport." Drac hesitated. "Sir, our scouts have found something unusual." Zethkar's yellow eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Long-range sensors detected energy signatures from an unknown system. The readings are strange. The system has 8 planets, but the 3rd one shows signs of a civilization we have never seen before. Another weak species hiding in the dark," Zethkar said with contempt. "What makes them worth our attention?" Drac activated a display screen. "The planet appears to be what scientists call a perfect world. The gravity is weak, only 1 standard unit. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. The temperature is stable across most of the surface. There are vast oceans and green lands." Zethkar studied the readings. "Sounds like paradise for weaklings. What about the creatures living there?" "Initial scans show billions of them. The dominant species appears to be bipedal, around 6 feet tall. They have no natural armor, no claws, no fangs. Their skin looks thin and easily damaged. They seem to live only 70 to 100 years. "Pathetic," Zethkar spat. "They sound even weaker than the Altarians. Why waste our time with such creatures? The planet has incredible resources, sir. Vast deposits of rare metals. Clean water everywhere. The biodiversity readings are off our charts. And, sir?" Drac paused. "They seem to have avoided contact with the rest of the galaxy. No one knows they exist." Zethkar's mind began working. A rich world full of resources, populated by weak creatures who had hidden from galactic civilization. It sounded too good to be true. Fresh hunting grounds where no one would come to help the prey. "How did they stay hidden?" he asked. "Their system is in what other species call the Outer Rim. Most trade routes pass far from their location. They seem to have developed their civilization without any outside contact." Zethkar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then they have no idea what real predators look like. They have probably never seen true strength or felt real fear." He walked to the command center where dozens of Korthak officers worked at their stations. Each one was a proven killer, scarred from battles on 100 worlds. They had conquered empires and broken civilizations that had stood for millennia. "Set course for this new system," Zethkar commanded. "Ready the fleet for conquest. We will teach these soft creatures what happens when they meet their betters." The bridge came alive with activity. Officers began preparing weapons and analyzing the target world. The Bone Render was the flagship of a fleet that had never known defeat. 50 warships followed Zethkar's lead, each one capable of destroying entire cities. As the ship changed course, Zethkar thought about the conquest ahead. The creatures on this world had lived their entire existence without facing real danger. They had grown soft and weak under their perfect sky. They had never learned the lessons that came from living on a world that tried to kill you every day. The Korthak understood survival. Every day on Korth Prime was a test. The weak died young, eaten by predators or killed by the harsh environment. Only the strong reproduced. Only the clever survived long enough to learn wisdom. Only the ruthless lived to see old age. This had made them the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They fought with a fury that other species could not match. They never surrendered, never retreated, never showed mercy. Other civilizations had armies, but the Korthak were born to war. "Sir," reported the navigation officer, "we will reach the outer edge of their system in 6 days." "Good," Zethkar replied. "That gives us time to study our new prey. I want to know everything about these creatures before we begin the hunt." He looked at the star chart showing their destination. Such a small, isolated system. The creatures there had probably never imagined that something like the Korthak existed. They had lived their quiet lives on their gentle world, building their simple civilization, never dreaming that death was coming for them. Zethkar had seen this pattern many times before. Weak species always responded the same way when faced with superior force. First came disbelief, then fear, then desperate attempts to negotiate, and finally broken surrender. Some tried to fight, but they never understood real violence. They had no idea how to face an enemy that had been forged in the fires of a truly deadly world. "Commander Drakth," Zethkar called, "begin preparation protocols. I want our warriors ready for ground assault within 4 days. This conquest should be quick and easy." "Yes, sir. Should we prepare standard intimidation broadcasts?" "Of course. Let them know what is coming. Fear makes the conquest easier." As the fleet moved through space toward their target, Zethkar felt the familiar excitement of a new hunt. Each conquest added to Korthak glory and proved their superiority over the weak species that filled the galaxy. He had no way of knowing that the creatures on the third planet of that distant system had their own ideas about survival. He could not imagine that they had learned lessons, just as harsh as the ones taught on Korth Prime. He had never considered that a gentle-looking world might hide predators more dangerous than anything that had ever lived on Korth Prime. The Bone Render and its fleet continued toward Earth, carrying the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known toward a meeting that would change everything they believed about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be apex predators. The Korthak fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a storm cloud of death. 50 warships spread out in attack formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. At their center, the massive dreadnought Bone Render cast its shadow across space. Captain Zethkar stood on his bridge, studying the readings from the inner system. His officers worked quietly around him, analyzing the defenses of their new target. What they found made many of them laugh. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "our scans show no significant military presence. The creatures have some orbital installations, but they appear to be research stations and communication arrays. No weapon signatures detected." "What about their ships?" Zethkar asked. "Primitive chemical rockets, sir. Slow-moving vessels used for transport between their planets. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest escort ship." Zethkar nodded with satisfaction. It was exactly what he had expected. These creatures had lived in isolation for so long that they had never learned to build real weapons. They probably thought the greatest danger in the universe was bad weather. "Sir," came another report. "We are detecting communication signals directed at us. It appears they want to talk." "Of course they do," Zethkar said with amusement. "Show me." The main screen displayed a transmission from the third planet. A bipedal creature appeared just as the scans had described. It was shorter than a Korthak child with pale skin that looked like it would tear at the slightest touch. Its body showed no armor, no natural weapons, no signs of evolutionary adaptation for survival. The creature was speaking in its own language, but the ship's computers quickly translated the words. "Greetings, unknown visitors. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We welcome you to our solar system and hope to establish peaceful relations between our peoples." Several Korthak officers made sounds of disgust. The creature had introduced itself as an admiral, but looked like prey. Its voice carried no threat, no challenge, only hope for peaceful relations. "How pathetic," Commander Drakth muttered. "It does not even recognize predators when it sees them." Zethkar studied the transmission more carefully. The creature wore some kind of uniform and stood in what appeared to be a command center. Other similar creatures worked at stations around it. They moved with purpose but showed no signs of fear or preparation for battle. "Send a reply," Zethkar ordered. Tell them that Captain Zethkar of the Korthak Empire demands immediate audience with their leaders. They will send representatives to my ship within 6 hours or face the consequences. The communications officer sent the message, along with a standard data package showing Korthak power. Images of conquered worlds, burning cities, and broken enemies filled the transmission. Most species wet themselves when they saw what the Korthak had done to others. The response came back within an hour. The same creature, Admiral Chen, appeared on screen again. Captain Zethkar, we accept your invitation for a diplomatic meeting. We will send a small delegation to your ship. We ask that you guarantee their safety during these negotiations. It asked for guarantees, Drax said with amazement. Does it not understand that we could destroy their entire world from here? Clearly not, Zethkar replied. Arrange for their ship to dock with us. I want to see these creatures up close before we begin the conquest. 6 hours later, a small human shuttle approached the bone render. Zethkar watched it through the viewport and laughed at its design. The vessel looked like it was built from metal scraps and held together with hope. It moved slowly and seemed fragile enough to break apart if anyone looked at it too hard. Sir, reported the docking officer, their ship has arrived. 3 creatures request permission to board. Granted, Zethkar said, but maintain full security. I do not want these weak creatures contaminating my ship more than necessary. The delegation was escorted to the main conference room by 6 fully armed Korthak warriors. Zethkar waited for them there, along with Commander Drax and several other officers. When the doors opened, 3 humans walked in. The first was the Admiral Chen from the transmission. She moved with confidence despite being surrounded by creatures twice her size. Behind her came 2 others, one wearing the white coat of a scientist, the other in a different style of uniform. Zethkar had to admit he was impressed by their composure. Most species showed obvious fear when meeting Korthak for the first time. These creatures seemed calm, even curious. Of course, that just proved how stupid they were. Captain Zethkar, Admiral Chen said, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I am Admiral Sarah Chen. With me are Dr. James Morrison, our chief xenobiologist, and Colonel Marcus Webb, our military advisor. Zethkar stood to his full height, towering over the humans. His exoskeleton gleamed in the artificial light, and his claws clicked against the metal table. I am Captain Zethkar, Supreme Commander of this fleet and servant of the Korthak Empire. You stand before your betters, little creatures. To demonstrate Korthak superiority, Zethkar reached over to a support beam and crushed it with his bare hand. The metal crumpled like paper. Then he adjusted the room temperature to levels that would boil water, showing how Korthak could survive in conditions that would kill most species instantly. The humans watched this display with interest rather than fear. The one called Dr. Morrison even took out a small device and began taking readings. Impressive, Admiral Chen said. Your species has clearly adapted to harsh environmental conditions. We look forward to learning about your homeworld and culture. Zethkar was confused. Where was the terror? Where was the immediate submission? These creatures acted like they were at a research conference instead of facing their doom. You do not seem to understand your situation, Commander Drax said, stepping forward. The Korthak Empire has conquered 300 worlds. Entire civilizations have fallen before our might. You should be begging for mercy. Colonel Webb spoke for the first time. We understand that you are a powerful military force. However, we hope to avoid conflict through diplomatic means. Surely there is a way for our peoples to coexist peacefully. Dr. Morrison looked up from his readings. Fascinating. Your exoskeleton appears to be a silicon-carbon composite, very efficient for protection, though it must require enormous energy to maintain. And those claws, clearly evolved for a predatory lifestyle. May I ask about the atmospheric composition of your homeworld? Zethkar stared at the small creature. Instead of cowering in fear, it was asking scientific questions. Did it not realize that it was speaking to a being that could tear it apart without effort? You ask many questions for prey, Zethkar said coldly. Oh, we are not prey, Dr. Morrison replied pleasantly. Humans are actually persistence hunters by evolutionary design. We developed to chase down much larger and stronger animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. Quite effective, really. The casual way the creature said this made Zethkar pause. There was something in its voice, not boasting, just stating a fact. Like it was discussing the weather, Admiral Chen spoke again. Captain Zethkar, we believe there are benefits to peaceful cooperation between our species. Earth has resources that might interest you. and we are always eager to learn from other civilizations. The only thing your species needs to learn, Zethkar said, is how to serve your new masters. The Korthak Empire claims this system and all within it. You have one choice. Surrender now and accept slavery, or resist and face extinction. The three humans looked at each other. For a moment Zethkar thought they might finally show proper fear. Instead, Admiral Chen sighed sadly. That is disappointing, she said. We had hoped for a different outcome. Colonel Webb, please signal the fleet that diplomatic contact has failed. Webb touched a device on his uniform. Message sent, Admiral. What message? Drakth demanded. We are informing our people that you have declared hostile intent, Chen explained. Standard first contact protocols require us to attempt diplomacy before taking defensive measures. Zethkar laughed. Defensive measures? Your primitive rockets against the greatest fleet in the galaxy? This will be over in hours. Dr. Morrison was still taking readings with his device. Your species shows signs of evolution in high-gravity, chemically hostile environments. Impressive adaptations, but I notice some potential vulnerabilities. Your respiratory system appears optimized for methane-heavy atmospheres. Earth's oxygen levels might actually be toxic to you over extended periods. Are you threatening us, little creature? Zethkar snarled. Oh no, Dr. Morrison said with a smile. Just making observations. We find all species fascinating from a biological perspective. The casual confidence of these creatures was beginning to annoy Zethkar. They showed no proper respect for superior beings. They asked questions instead of begging for mercy. They acted like they had some kind of advantage. This meeting is over, Zethkar declared. Return to your world and tell your people that the Korthak fleet begins bombardment in 12 hours. Perhaps watching their cities burn will teach them proper respect. The three humans stood and prepared to leave. As they reached the door, Admiral Chen turned back. Captain Zethkar, I hope you will reconsider. War benefits no one. But if you insist on this course, please remember that humans have survived worse things than anything you can imagine. 12 hours after the failed diplomatic meeting, Captain Zethkar gave the order that had destroyed 100 worlds. Begin orbital bombardment. Target their major population centers. Show them what happens to those who refuse to kneel before the Korthak Empire. The Korthak fleet opened fire with weapons that could melt continents. Streams of plasma and antimatter missiles rained down toward Earth's surface, carrying enough destructive power to break mountains and boil seas. Zethkar expected to see cities vanish in clouds of fire and radioactive dust. Instead, his weapons struck energy barriers that blazed to life around every target. Defensive shields rose from hidden installations across the planet's surface, deflecting attacks that should have killed millions. What is this? Commander Drakth demanded, staring at the tactical display. Where did those shields come from? Unknown, sir, reported the tactical officer. Our sensors detected no defensive installations during our initial scans. They seem to have emerged from underground or underwater positions. Zethkar watched, in growing amazement as more defensive systems revealed themselves. Weapon platforms rose from the ocean floors. Missile batteries emerged from mountains that had seemed empty. Fighter squadrons launched from facilities that had been invisible to Korthak sensors. How many installations are there? He asked. Sensors detect over 3,000 defensive positions, sir, and more are still appearing. The human response was unlike anything the Korthak had faced before. Most species panicked when the bombardment began. Their governments fell apart, their military forces scattered, and their populations fled in terror. Earth showed none of these signs. Instead, the planet seemed to transform before their eyes. Peaceful research stations revealed themselves as military command centers. Civilian transport ships deployed weapons and joined the defense fleet. Manufacturing centers that had been building consumer goods switched to producing ammunition and military supplies. Sir, came a report from the communication station. We are intercepting human transmissions. They appear to be coordinating a global response. Put it on speakers, Zethkar ordered. The bridge filled with voices speaking in dozens of different human languages, all translated by the ship's computers. What Zethkar heard confused him even more than the sudden appearance of their defenses. Tokyo Command, this is Beijing. Our missile batteries are online and ready to support your sector. Moscow to all stations. Ammunition production increased by 300%. Supply lines are holding steady. Cairo base reporting. Civilian evacuation complete. All defensive positions manned and ready. There was no panic in these voices, no terror, no desperation, no chaos. The humans were coordinating their response with calm efficiency, like they had practiced this scenario many times before. They were ready for us, Drakth said with disbelief. But how? Our scouts detected no military preparation. Before Zethkar could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Sir, we have incoming missiles from the planet's surface. The main screen showed thousands of human weapons rising from Earth. They moved faster than expected, and when they struck the Korthak shields, they hit with surprising force. Several escort ships reported damage to their outer hulls. Impossible, the weapons officer said. Those primitive rockets should not be able to penetrate our defenses. Analyze their composition, Zethkar ordered. The report came back within minutes. Sir, these are not the same weapons we detected in our initial scans. The humans appear to have more advanced technology than they showed us. Zethkar's yellow eyes narrowed. The prey had hidden their claws until the moment of attack. It was almost clever, but cleverness would not save them from superior force. Launch fighter squadrons, he commanded. Clear their defensive positions and prepare for ground assault. 1,000 Korthak fighters swept down toward Earth's atmosphere. Each pilot was a veteran warrior who had fought above dozens of conquered worlds. They expected to find primitive aircraft that would fall like leaves before their superior technology. Instead, they met human fighters that moved with impossible agility. The Earth ships were smaller and seemed more fragile, but they flew with a precision that amazed the Korthak pilots. Human squadrons worked together like flocks of hunting birds, coordinating their attacks with split-second timing. Beta Squadron reports heavy resistance, came a transmission from the fighter command. The human pilots are unusual. They take risks that should be suicide, but somehow they survive. Zethkar watched the fighter battle on his tactical display. Red dots representing Korthak fighters began disappearing at an alarming rate. The humans were not just holding their own. They were winning. How is this possible? Drakth demanded. Our fighters are superior in every way. Better armor, better weapons, better speed. The human pilots, sir, reported the tactical officer. They fly like they do not fear death. They perform maneuvers that should kill them, but their reaction times are incredible, and they seem to anticipate our movements before we make them. On the main screen, Zethkar watched a human fighter perform a turn that should have crushed its pilot under enormous forces. Instead, the small craft spun around a Korthak fighter and destroyed it with a perfectly placed shot. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen, the communications officer reported. Put her on screen, Zethkar ordered. The human admiral appeared, standing in what looked like an underground command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations, managing the defense of their world with the same calm efficiency they had shown during the diplomatic meeting. Captain Zethkar, Chen said, this is your final opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. We do not wish to destroy your fleet, but we will defend our world. Zethkar laughed, though it sounded forced even to him. You speak of destroying our fleet? You pathetic creatures cannot even leave your own planet without mechanical assistance. That is true, Chen admitted. We are adapted to our world's environment. But Captain, you seem to have misunderstood something important about Earth. And what is that? You think Earth is a paradise world that made us weak. But Earth is the reason we are strong. The transmission switched to show images from across the planet. Humans working in conditions that should have killed them. Deep underwater, in radioactive zones, in temperatures that ranged from burning heat to deadly cold. The images showed humans surviving in environments almost as hostile as Korth Prime itself. Your scouts saw our cities and our peaceful civilization, Chen continued. But they did not see our history. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on the planet. Plagues that killed 9 out of every 10 humans alive. Zethkar stared at the images. Humans diving to crushing depths in the ocean. Humans working in the heat of active volcanoes. Humans surviving in frozen wastelands where the air itself could freeze solid. We learned to survive because Earth taught us that the universe does not care if we live or die, Chen said. We learned to work together because alone we are weak. We learned to adapt because those who could not adapt died. We learned to never give up because giving up meant extinction. Lies, Dracht said. Your world is a garden. We have seen the scans. Yes, Chen said with a smile that was not entirely pleasant. Earth is beautiful now. Do you know why? Because we spent millions of years learning how to make it that way. We turned a world that regularly tried to commit genocide against all life into the garden you see today. And we did it while fighting off predators that make your people look gentle. The transmission ended, leaving the Korthak bridge in silence. Around them, the battle continued to rage, but the reports were all the same. Human resistance was stronger than expected. Human tactics were more clever than predicted. Human weapons were more effective than analyzed. Sir, the tactical officer said quietly, our fighter squadrons are requesting permission to withdraw. Losses are significant. Zethkar looked at the numbers and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. Half his fighters were gone, and the human defenses showed no signs of weakening. Begin ground assault, he ordered. Deploy landing forces to 3 major continents. We will show these creatures what Korthak warriors can do in personal combat. But even as he gave the order, Zethkar wondered if these humans might be hiding more surprises. They had concealed their true technology until the moment of battle. They had hidden defensive systems that appeared more advanced than anything in their initial scans. They fought with a coordination and determination that seemed impossible for such a fragile-looking species. Most disturbing of all, they showed no fear. Every other species had broken under Korthak assault. They begged, they ran. They surrendered when faced with superior force. But these humans seemed to grow more dangerous as the situation became more desperate. As the first Korthak landing ships descended toward Earth's surface, Zethkar began to suspect that this conquest would not be as easy as he had thought. The prey was fighting back with claws of its own, and those claws were sharper than anything the Korthak had expected. The question was whether the greatest warriors in the galaxy were about to meet something even deadlier than themselves. Commander Vracht had led Korthak ground forces on 20 worlds. He had broken armies and crushed civilizations. He had never been defeated in personal combat, so when his dropship crashed into the forests of what humans called North America, he expected another easy victory. Instead, he found himself trapped in a nightmare that made no sense. The human soldiers moved through their own forests like ghosts. They appeared from nowhere, struck with deadly precision, and vanished before the Korthak could respond. Worse yet, they fought in conditions that should have been impossible for such fragile creatures. Vracht watched in amazement as human soldiers operated in temperatures that froze his breath. They moved through poisonous swamps that burned Korthak's skin. They seemed to survive injuries that would have killed any reasonable creature, and kept fighting with wounds that should have dropped them unconscious. How do they do it? Asked Sub-Commander Kreltar as they took shelter in a damaged human building. They have no natural armor, but they survive hits from our plasma rifles. They have no claws, but they kill our warriors with simple metal tools. Before Vracht could answer, explosions shook the building around them. Human artillery had found their position again. These creatures seemed to have an endless supply of weapons and an impossible knowledge of where every Korthak force was located. Sir, came a report over the radio. 3rd Battalion is requesting immediate extraction. They are pinned down by human forces using weapons we cannot identify. What kind of weapons? Vracht demanded. Unknown, sir. The humans appear to be throwing small metal spheres that explode with tremendous force. Our troops say the humans can throw these weapons with accuracy over impossible distances. Vracht was beginning to understand that nothing about this conquest was going according to plan. The humans should have been easy prey. Instead, they were fighting like creatures who had been born for war. 3 days into the ground assault, the situation became even more confusing when human forces launched a counterattack against a Korthak cruiser that had been damaged in orbit. Security footage from the ship showed something that Vracht's mind could barely accept. Human soldiers, wearing only thin atmospheric suits, had somehow boarded the cruiser through sections that were open to space. They moved through areas without air or heat as if these conditions were merely inconvenient. When Korthak defenders tried to stop them, the humans fought with a desperate fury that seemed to make them stronger instead of weaker. The most disturbing part was how they worked together. Korthak were individual warriors who conquered through personal strength, but humans moved like a single organism with many bodies. When one fell, others immediately took his place. When one was wounded, the others covered for him. They shared weapons, shared water, shared blood if necessary. The footage showed a human soldier with a massive wound in his chest continuing to fight for 20 minutes before finally collapsing. It showed another human carrying a wounded teammate while shooting accurately with his free hand. Most impossible of all, it showed humans making tactical decisions based on helping each other rather than saving themselves. "Sir," reported the ship's medical officer over the radio, "we have captured several human soldiers. Dr. Chen has asked to examine them." Frakth knew that name. Dr. Chen was the scientist who had accompanied Admiral Chen during the diplomatic meeting. He had been captured during the boarding action and was being held in the cruiser's medical bay. "What has he discovered?" Frakth asked. "Sir, you need to hear this for yourself." An hour later, Frakth stood in the medical bay of the damaged cruiser, looking down at a captured human soldier. The creature was unconscious but alive despite injuries that should have killed him 3 times over. Dr. Chen stood nearby, studying readings from medical scanners with intense fascination. "Remarkable," Dr. Chen was saying to the Korthak medical officer. "Your species evolved for individual survival in a hostile environment. Very efficient design. But humans took a different path." "Explain," Frakth demanded. Dr. Chen looked up at him with the same calm expression he had worn during the diplomatic meeting. "Humans evolved as pack hunters on a world that regularly tried to kill everything living on it. We survived not through individual strength, but through cooperation and adaptation." He gestured to the wounded human soldier. "This man has injuries that would disable most species. But human physiology developed to keep functioning under damage. Our blood clots quickly. Our nervous system can route around damaged areas. Our brain produces chemicals that block pain and increase strength when we are threatened." The Korthak medical officer made a sound of disbelief. "Impossible. No creature can survive such trauma." "On most worlds you would be correct," Dr. Chen agreed. "But Earth is not most worlds. Let me show you something." He activated a holographic display that showed Earth's history. Images of massive asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions that covered continents in ash, ice ages that turned the planet into a frozen wasteland. 5 times in Earth's history, catastrophic events killed more than 90% of all life on the planet, Dr. Chen explained. Each time a few creatures survived and repopulated the world. Humans are descended from the survivors of all 5 extinction events. Frakth stared at the images. "Your species lived through planetary extinction events?" "Not just lived through them," Dr. Chen corrected. "We learned from them. Each catastrophe taught us new ways to survive. We learned to eat anything that could provide nutrition. We learned to live in any environment that had air and water. We learned to work together because alone we always died." More images appeared, showing human ancestors surviving in conditions that looked like descriptions of hell. Creatures with no claws or armor or natural weapons, somehow thriving in a world full of predators that were bigger, stronger, and more deadly than anything the Korthak had ever faced. "Your scouts made a mistake," Dr. Chen continued. "They saw that Earth had become a garden world and assumed it had always been gentle. But we made it into a garden by surviving everything it could throw at us. We turned a world that tried to kill us into a world that serves us." The hologram shifted to show modern Earth. Cities that could survive earthquakes and storms. Farms that could feed billions despite droughts and floods. Technology that let humans live underwater, underground, in space in conditions that would kill most species instantly. "We are not strong like the Korthak," Dr. Chen said. "We do not have your armor or your claws or your individual fighting ability. But we have something else. We have 40 million years of evolution teaching us that the universe wants us dead and we refuse to die." Frakth felt something cold moving through his 3 hearts. "You are trying to frighten us with stories." "No," Dr. Chen said simply. "I am trying to explain why your invasion is failing." He activated another display showing the current status of the ground war. Korthak forces were being pushed back on every continent. Human resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. Most shocking of all, Humans seemed to be learning Korthak tactics and developing counters faster than the Korthak could adapt. You see, Commander, the Korthak are magnificent individual warriors. Each of you is worth 10 humans in single combat, but humans do not fight as individuals. We fight as a species. Every human who dies teaches the rest of us how to fight you better. Every battle we lose shows us your weaknesses. Every day this war continues, we become more dangerous to you. The medical officer interrupted. Sir, I am detecting unusual readings from the human prisoner. His vital signs are changing. They looked down at the wounded human soldier. His eyes had opened and he was looking around the room with calm awareness. When he saw the Korthak officers, he smiled. Good morning, the soldier said in accented Korthak language. I am Sergeant Rodriguez, United Earth Marines. I surrender myself as a prisoner of war and request treatment under the Geneva Conventions. Vracath was amazed. The creature had been unconscious with severe injuries moments ago. Now it was speaking coherently and even trying to negotiate the terms of its capture. How are you awake? The medical officer demanded. Your injuries? Oh, these? Sergeant Rodriguez looked down at his bandaged chest. Not too bad. I have had worse. Your medical technology is very good, by the way. Much better than our field hospitals. Dr. Chen smiled. Sergeant Rodriguez, please tell our hosts about the Battle of Stalingrad. Ah, yes, the soldier said, his eyes growing distant. My great-grandfather fought there. Soviet humans against German humans, winter of 1942. Temperature 40 degrees below freezing. No food, no heat, no hope. They fought for months in conditions that should have killed everyone involved, and they did it with weapons that were primitive even by the standards of their time. He looked directly at Vracath. Humans have been fighting wars like this one for thousands of years, Commander. Wars where defeat means extinction. Wars where surrender means slavery or death. We have very good practice at not giving up. Vracath realized that something had changed in the room. The human soldier was still wounded, still captured, still completely helpless. But somehow he no longer seemed like prey. There was something in his eyes. Not fear, not desperation, but the calm confidence of a predator that knew it would eventually find its opportunity to strike. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human battleship Endurance, watching the tactical display as Earth's combined fleet moved toward the Korthak flagship. 3 weeks of brutal warfare had led to this moment. The alien invaders were about to learn why humans had survived every extinction event their planet could create. Ma'am, reported Commander Park. Our boarding teams are ready. All assault ships are in position. Rodriguez nodded, studying the massive alien dreadnought ahead of them. The bone render was larger than anything humanity had ever built, armed with weapons that could crack moons. But size and firepower were not the only factors that determined victory. Signal all ships, she ordered. Begin final assault. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species that the Korthak have conquered. Today we show the galaxy what real apex predators look like. The human fleet moved forward like a school of attacking sharks. The ships were smaller than their Korthak opponents, but they moved with coordination that seemed impossible. Every vessel knew exactly where it needed to be, when it needed to be there, and what role it played in the larger plan. Aboard the bone render, Captain Zethkar watched the approaching fleet with growing desperation. 3 weeks of fighting had shattered everything he believed about warfare. His mighty fleet had been reduced to 12 ships. His ground forces had been driven off every continent. His warriors, the finest in the galaxy, had been outfought by creatures that looked like they should not be able to lift their own weapons. Sir, Commander Vracath reported, the human ships are using some kind of coordinated targeting system. They strike our weak points with perfect precision. Impossible, Zethkar said, but his voice lacked confidence. Nothing about this war had followed the rules he understood. These humans fought like they had studied Korthak weaknesses for years. Even though they had never seen his species before 3 weeks ago, the human assault ships broke through the Korthak defenses like bullets through paper. They moved too fast for the heavy weapons to target, struck with surgical precision, and coordinated their attacks with split-second timing. Within minutes, the first boarding pod slammed into the bone render's hull. Zethkar rushed to the security monitors to watch his warriors repel the invaders. What he saw instead was a nightmare that would haunt him forever. Human soldiers poured through the breach sections wearing armor that looked fragile compared to Korthak exoskeletons, but they moved through the ship like water flowing downhill, seeming to anticipate every defensive position and counter every tactic before the Korthak could implement it. More disturbing was how they fought. Korthak warriors relied on individual strength and aggression. They fought to prove their personal superiority over their enemies. But humans fought like a single organism with dozens of bodies. When one soldier fell, another immediately took his place. When a position became untenable, they withdrew in perfect coordination to a better position. How do they do it? Dracht whispered, watching the monitors in amazement. They share information instantly. They adapt to our tactics in real time. They fight like they have one mind controlling many bodies. Sethkar knew the answer, though he refused to admit it. These creatures had evolved as pack hunters. They did not think of themselves as individuals first, but as parts of a larger whole. Every human soldier carried the knowledge and experience of every other human soldier who had ever lived. The bridge doors exploded inward, and human soldiers poured through the breach. Sethkar drew his weapon and prepared to show these creatures what a true Korthak warrior could do. The first human through the door was Admiral Rodriguez herself. She moved with fluid grace, her weapon already trained on Sethkar before he could complete his draw. Behind her came a dozen human soldiers who spread out and secured the bridge with professional efficiency. "Captain Sethkar," Rodriguez said calmly, "I am Admiral Lisa Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force. I am here to accept your surrender." Sethkar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You think you have won? I am Korthak. I have conquered more worlds than your species has years of history." "I know," Rodriguez replied. "I have studied the records of every species you have enslaved, every world you have burned, every civilization you have destroyed. That is why this ends here." Sethkar lunged forward with speed that had killed 100 enemies. His claws could tear through armor plating. His strength could crush bones to powder. He was 8 feet of pure predatory evolution, striking with the fury of a creature that had never known defeat. Rodriguez moved like water around his attack. She did not try to match his strength or meet his charge head-on. Instead, she flowed aside and struck at points where his exoskeleton was weakest. Her movements were precise, economical, and devastatingly effective. For the first time in his life, Sethkar found himself fighting an opponent who was faster than he was. Not stronger. Rodriguez was barely half his size, but faster in ways that mattered. She anticipated his moves before he made them. She struck at vulnerabilities he did not know he had. She fought like she had been studying his species for years instead of weeks. "How?" He gasped as her blade found a gap in his armor. "How can you move like that?" "Evolution," Rodriguez replied, pressing her attack. "Humans learned to hunt creatures much larger and stronger than ourselves. We developed reflexes fast enough to dodge charging predators. We learned to work together to bring down prey that could kill any of us individually. We learned patience, planning, and the ability to strike at exactly the right moment." Sethkar tried to grab her with his massive hands, but she slipped away like smoke. Her weapon found another weak point, then another. Green blood began to flow from wounds that should not have been possible. "You are not warriors," he snarled. "You are cowards who use tricks instead of strength." "No," Rodriguez said softly. "We are survivors, and the first rule of survival is that dead heroes do not protect anyone." She struck one final time, and Sethkar fell to the deck of his own ship. The pain was incredible, but what hurt more was the realization that he had been defeated by a creature 1/3 his size, who had never set foot on a world as deadly as Korth Prime. Rodriguez knelt beside him, and to his amazement, she began treating his wounds with medical supplies from her pack. "What are you doing?" he asked weakly. "Keeping you alive," she replied. "Humans learned long ago that enemies today can become allies tomorrow. The galaxy is a big place, Captain. There is room for both our species if we can learn to coexist." Sethkar stared at her in confusion. "You would show mercy to those who tried to destroy you?" "We would show wisdom," Rodriguez corrected. "Your people are magnificent warriors, but you have spent so long being the strongest that you forgot there are different kinds of strength. Humans survive not by being the biggest predator, but by being the smartest." She stood and activated her communicator. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. The Korthak flagship has surrendered. Cease fire and prepare to offer medical assistance to survivors." "You are letting us live?" Dracht asked in amazement. "We are giving you a choice," Rodriguez said. "You can leave our system and never return. You can stay and learn to live peacefully with humanity. Or you can continue this war and discover what humans are really capable of when we stop holding back." Sethkar looked around his bridge. Half his crew was wounded. His ship was crippled, His fleet was destroyed, but these humans were offering medical aid to their enemies and proposing coexistence instead of demanding total surrender. "I do not understand you," he said. "You will," Rodriguez replied. "Humans are very good teachers. We learned patience from waiting out ice ages. We learned cooperation from surviving plagues. We learned forgiveness from rebuilding after wars that nearly destroyed us." She walked to the main view screen and activated it, showing Earth in all its blue and green beauty. "Your scouts saw a garden world and thought it had made us weak," she said. "But Earth is a garden because we spent millions of years learning how to make it one. We turned a world that tried to kill us into a world that nurtures us. We can teach you to do the same." Zethkar struggled to his feet, his worldview crumbling around him. Everything he had believed about strength, about conquest, about what it meant to be apex predators, had been proven wrong by these small, fragile-looking creatures. "What happens now?" he asked. Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time it was not the expression of a predator, but of a teacher offering to share knowledge. "Now you learn," she said. "You learn that true apex predators do not need to look dangerous. They do not need to conquer others to prove their strength. They do not need to rule through fear." She gestured to the humans working around the bridge, providing medical aid to their former enemies with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. "True apex predators," Rodriguez continued, "are so confident in their abilities that they can afford to be generous. They are so secure in their strength that they can offer their hand to help others become stronger. They understand that the real victory is not defeating your enemies, but turning them into allies. As human medical teams worked to save Korthak lives, as human engineers helped repair damaged Korthak systems, as human diplomats began planning for a future where both species could thrive, Zethkar finally understood what he had.